All right, everybody. 7 o'clock. I'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Nancy Rondell.
Here.
Matt McGarrett.
Here.
Al Baker. Here. John Cox. Here. And John Leo.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Excellent. We have some minutes from the April 19th meeting. Didn't see any glaring mistakes. I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Excellent. And the bill committee?
Everything was in order in my stack.
Everything is in order now, so I make a motion that we approve the bill.
I'll second that.
Excellent. All in favor of paying the bills?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. It's time for citizens' comment. If you're here and have something you'd like to address us about that's not on the agenda. Not on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
Perfect. Could you give us your name and address?
My name is James Coster. I live at 120 Birchwood Drive in Harbor Springs.
Perfect.
Approximately 3.5 months ago, on January the 18th, this council did not go along with the purchase of the Wheatley property. It was terminated. The Wheatley Landowners Association had every right, every legal right, to not go into that agreement. And yet on that night, Councilman Cupp said this, and I would just like to keep this in the back of our minds. If that Landowners Association want to come to us for anything out of the ordinary, we kind of keep this in the back of our mind. What was that, a threat? Was that a threat? Did you ever apologize? I sent 2 letters to this council requesting that he apologize to the taxpayers, to Week-Wisconsin. Not a response. I'm appalled. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that this city council did not question that comment. Do you sanction comments like that? So far, no apology. You know what this is? That comment is a seed. It's a seed for a plant that grows and grows and grows until you have corruption. This council should tell him to apologize. In fact, he should stand up, face the camera, and apologize to the taxpayers. You should write a letter to the Week-Wisconsin Landowners Association apologizing for that kind of a comment. I just find this so shocking and so appalling, I just can't believe it. You know, this is politics in Washington. This is politics in Detroit. This is politics in Lansing. Harbor Springs is too good for this. Any comments?
Ma'am?
Are you going to apologize?
No.
Why?
I apologize to this board. And for one, you're in West Traverse Township.
That's
Who's out
right.
there? You got nothing to do with what goes on here.
Whoa, wait a minute. Whoa. Wait a minute. That is something I refuse to believe. I pay taxes to the state of Michigan. Yeah.
This is not an open forum for this kind of discussion.
I understand.
We heard what you said, and we appreciate your comments. And if Mr. Cups does or does not want to apologize, that's his position, and I don't think the council can force him to do anything.
So you sanction that kind of comment?
I think you took it out of context personally, but it's...
Just going what you said. Well, I'm surprised, still shocked, still appalled. This community is better than that. And you know it.
Is there anybody else with any public comment tonight in the audience? Anyone on the computer?
Anyone on Zoom? We did get an email I put in your pocket from Nikki Law from Powhatan, Maine. We are in the Spring Street parking lot.
Okay. All right.
As a reminder, if you are on Zoom, please mute your microphone unless you are speaking, so we don't hear the background noise.
Okay. I guess we can move into the city manager section.
Great, thank you, Council. The first item is event request approvals. We have a couple of events that need approval. One is Shea Days. That's an annual event you all know about. They're going to be taking place at Shea Park on July 16th and July 17th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. They'll meet day before and day after for setup and takedown. Maximum 100 people. That's well within the outdoor attendance limits for an event. So for that one, I recommend approval. And I would probably want to separate this one from the Memorial Day one. So this one will be a separate approval if the council is fine with that.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with the Shea Day event. The motion that we approve.
I think you're right on this, as long as they comply with all the requirements for social distancing, etc. It's a great idea.
Just get
I motioned it. Do you have a second?
Me.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
The second event is for the Memorial Day Parade. This is taking place, obviously, on Memorial Day, which is May 31st this year. It's going to start at the police station, head west for normal, down to State Street, and south to Bay Street to the Zorn Park where they do a service. CDC guidance does suggest that it is safe for fully vaccinated people to attend outdoor events like parades, but maybe not so much for unvaccinated people. I looked at the health department's guidance. They don't specifically address parades in their epidemic order, but they do address outdoor venue gatherings, and here they put a 1,000-person limit on such gatherings in an FAQ that they have on their website. The question was asked, what gathering capacity restrictions do you have for outdoor festivals, fairs, and parades? They cited that 1,000-person limit. So I'm recommending approval based on staff. I talked to staff. I also talked to Fire Chief Cups that we normally don't get near 1,000 people for that Memorial Day parades, and they'll be spread out from the police station down to Zorn Park. So when we're talking about parades, this is different in my mind than the 4th of July parade, and I think it would be a safe event. Chief Knight had recommended closing down Main Street and State Street to parking during the parade, a little bit before and during it. That way we could have people spread out even a little bit more.
It's a good idea.
So based on that information, I recommend approval, still encouraging people and them to follow any epidemic order regarding masking. And I know Chief Knight was also on the phone call with the health department, and they may soon be aligning their orders with CDC guidance. And so
That's correct. I was on there today actually, and she said, Lisa Peacock said they're still in the process of aligning the health order with the CDC guidance. So right now the health department's a little more restrictive, but they're going to align them here pretty soon.
Any discussion?
No. Motion is over.
I'll second that. All in favor of the Memorial Day parade?
Aye.
Opposed?
So the third one is 4th of July, and that's the fireworks and the parade. I think it may be still too early to decide on that based on the fact that they might be adjusting their guidance. And we can always say no later if that's the answer, or yes later. If we decide today and the guidance changes and then we change our mind on whether or not we want to have it with the guidance or any of the new case rates or any other information that comes out that might influence our opinions, then we maybe don't want to rush to a decision right now. However, I think they're two different events. There's the fireworks and the parade, and I think something we need to decide on, which one attracts more people, which one would be safer, which one would be allow for greater spacing. So I was going to think to come back to May 17th to council and have information on new and active cases, vaccination rates, MDHS orders, and CDC guidance, so that way council can make a decision. But I wanted to ask council first if there any other information that you want to know before you make a decision. I know there's been talk about whether Petoskey's doing theirs or not, what other municipalities are doing theirs, to try to coordinate with them or to ensure we don't have an influx of people if they're not having theirs. But I will leave it up to council for any more information that you want me to present.
Have you heard from any of the other municipalities?
The only one I've talked to so far has been Petoskey. They've said they've canceled some of their July events, but they still haven't had that discussion on whether or not they're going to go forward with the fireworks. They have talked about potentially looking into a backup date of Labor Day for doing their fireworks if they decide 4th of July is a no. I've talked also with Chamber Foundation, Kathy Breitner. We said that they would be able to raise money for a 4th of July, Labor Day weekend fireworks.
Is there like a drop dead date for committing to the fireworks company?
Well, what we have here is when I spoke to Kathy Breitner, the Chamber Foundation, they start their fundraising in June, so that would be before or earlier.
I got my letter today.
You already got it. So I figured we want to know June would be the June council meeting would be too late, and we do have to let the Coast Guard know as well. We have to coordinate with them.
Yeah, so I'm also on the foundation board. Bonnie Culp with the Harbor Springs Chamber. So I believe they are two separate things, the parade and the fireworks. The fireworks does need, it's a more timely thing to raise the money. So they would need to, within a reasonable amount of time, know for sure. That said, someone said something about the fireworks company. I've spoken with the fireworks company. They've started filling out the paperwork and the request that they need to, just in case, but they also know it hasn't been approved yet. So the fireworks company is not a concern. It's more the fundraising for the fireworks themselves.
Now, this is the same discussion we had a year ago about whether we were going to do it.
Right.
And am I remembering that the fireworks were actually already in the warehouse at that point?
I think that's
They
right.
are.
Yeah, I think we prepaid
So have we prepaid?
We've paid for a portion.
Okay, so the fundraising effort is for the remainder,
Yes.
but the
Only
fireworks
a
are already
portion.
built.
They have, so I'm told they have the fireworks. I'm
Probably
told
something
that
to
they have
confirm.
them and they are in the warehouse, but there's big fundraising that has to happen to help with the payments, yes.
I would think in a couple more weeks, hopefully we'll be able to see which way this is trending with the vaccines. I mean, I know there's big clinics going on right now. And I think we might have a little bit better luck.
Cancellations today.
I'm sorry, what, John?
The radio was full of cancellations today for festivals.
Yeah.
Like that, so.
But I think if we wait 2 more weeks, as long as it doesn't impact, the fireworks or the people for the parade, I don't see any harm in waiting.
Right.
We might have a clearer picture in a couple more weeks.
Yeah, so parades doesn't matter, I think, with
The
the fireworks
fireworks.
is more of an issue.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I would probably say tentatively the fireworks are going, unless something goes haywire in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, so we should probably postpone until next meeting.
The new cases are definitely trending in the right direction.
We're
Unless
starting.
something strange happens, they're going to continue.
Make the vaccination rate higher.
Well, and we're well vaccinated up here compared to a lot of places. We really are. It would be more the influx of people
Exactly.
that are not
Correct.
coming up.
That's the risk.
Yeah, yeah.
Would it be reasonable to discuss like a logistics plan, like whereby we could paint X's like every 6 feet or something like that, or?
I don't think that's
practical.
Now with the crowds to get here, you have them stretched all
So
over
1,000
town.
X's and ground. Yeah, okay.
That might or might not be honored.
Yeah, All right. Next then.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you. I'll be back, put that on the agenda for May 17th. Item B is for a rezoning request at 153 Zoll Street, just across the street.
And I need to say something. Upon recommendation of the city attorney and the city manager, I'm going to recuse myself. I don't really I feel that I can be non-partial, even though I do own adjoining properties, but I'm certainly going to respect their request for me to do that. So I'm going to step over there.
Thanks.
So this is a request by Ann and Peter Askew of 153 Zoll Street to request their rezone their property from residential multiple to R2, two-family residential. They indicate that their property has always been used as a single-family residence and that is adjacent to 21 parcels to the north that are zoned R2. They intend to add a small garage and a covered patio to the backyard. This is not allowed in the RM district, but it is allowed. It is something that individuals and property owners in the R2 district can do. In this memo, the Planning Commission, planning consultant Larry Nix, who is on Zoom here as well, if you have questions for him, recommended that the Planning Commission approve a recommendation to council allowing for the rezoning based on two reasons. The first reason was it's consistent with the recommendation of the master plan, and second is the historic use of the property. It's always historically been used as single-family residential. The Planning Commission had a pretty lengthy discussion at their meeting a couple weeks ago. They voted 8-1 to approve it. The council member was opposed, as well as some in the public expressed a couple concerns. One was the need to first update the master plan as we're going through that master plan update process before deciding on it. And the second one was to see if there was a different way to get what the applicants wanted without having to rezone. But based on that conversation and the guidance of planning consultant Larry Nix, the Planning Commission ultimately decided that the current master plan provides the guidance for the city on how to act here. So the council's duty here is to act. This would be a change to the code, so the council essentially by rezoning it, we're changing. There's an ordinance we need to pass, so council needs to act on this, and they can act on it by approving it, denying it, or if they want to have another hearing. Per statute, we're allowed to have another hearing, another meeting on it if you want more information. But my recommendation is to recommend approval based on the Planning Commission's recommendation. I think the applicant's architect here.
Yeah, Jessica
as well.
Moore, just in case you had a question, I showed up.
Thank you.
It's just for this parcel anyway, right? It's not for the whole area.
Just one person.
Section.
And the planning commission was a real good discussion. It really went back and forth.
I would go with the recommendation.
Can I, Mayor, can I say something from the public standpoint about it? Is this the right time? Okay.
You want to open it up for the public discussion? It's a public hearing. So
Right. Yeah, it's not public.
Okay. Well, my name's Nancy Rondell, and my address is 181 Zoll. And as a member of the public and an elector of the city of Harbor Springs, I would like to bring to the attention of the council that if you do decide to change the zoning on 153 Zoll from RM to R2, you will be creating a new non-conformity. And I just think you need to be aware of that. The lot width is 73 feet, and the existing placement of the primary structure is on the north side is 5.5 feet from the north property line. Those are existing nonconformities. Those have been there. But there will be a new encroachment because of the recently expanded primary structure on the south side yard setback. The addition to the primary structure was built in the RM in an approved use, which is you can put a single family home there using R1B. And in the R1B, the side yard setbacks are 10 feet. So this new structure meets those setbacks because it's about 10 feet, I think it's 3 inches from the south property line. But in the R2 zoning district, the side yard setbacks are 12 feet. So that's going to create a new non-conformity on the south side. In the recent Planning Commission meeting, there was a lot of discussion about setbacks and the existing non-conformities, as well as concerns about creating any new non-conformity. And that issue about the 12 feet on the south side was not discussed at all, and it wasn't brought to the attention of the Planning Commission that they were going to create a new non-conformity. I just feel like it's very important that the boards and council are given complete and accurate information when we're making decisions. And I felt like that was an oversight, that wasn't pointed out. Thanks.
As I remember it, the recommendation to approve at the end was made with the caveat that it didn't
It was.
create new
It was.
non-conformity.
It was.
I don't remember if it was Andy or someone else, but that was brought up specifically.
I know.
So that's a rule.
So,
And I just think we need to be aware. I think, we have to be careful we're working with all the facts when we make decisions.
I think the discussion was, we're proposing a garage at the back. I think the discussion was more about whether or not that would create any new nonconformities, which it will not. The proposed structure would meet with the new zoning without any new nonconformity.
Right, because the garage has different setbacks.
Correct.
but our code says that we cannot approve changes that will create or increase non-conformities, if I remember correctly.
Well, Larry is online. Larry, can you speak to that? Oh, you're on mute, Larry.
You can't hear me, right?
Now we can.
You can see my mouth moving, but you couldn't hear me. I forgot that unmute thing. Basically, what we have is an existing single-family home in the RM district. It was approved as it was expanded under the RM zoning district. The lot itself is only 73 feet wide, which is non-conforming by the RM zoning classification, and it will remain that way also with the R2 zoning classification. It's not necessarily a new nonconformity because it's proposed now as a conforming single-family home, but the setbacks are different with the R2 zoning classification. So the proposed new buildings will be consistent with the zoning of the R2 district as is illustrated in the site plan, but the existing house that is a approved use because it's consistent with the RM district is a conforming use because it's been authorized by the zoning administrator as being a proper expansion under the current zoning. The change of the zoning, though, does create that nonconformity from the R2 is a 12-foot setback, and the RM is a 10-foot setback. I hope that helps a little bit.
So we are increasing the non-conformity.
You're making increasing it. The non-conformity isn't there today, but you're creating, though, a non-conforming situation that was not there before this expansion was put on. If you rezone the property.
Right.
So it's not about the garage, it's about the original house is now.
Yes.
Well,
the original house as it's been expanded through today.
Right.
Because the attached garage in Breezeway were a recent addition to the home in conformance with the RM zoning classification.
So does our code not state that we can't approve a change that will increase or create a non-conformity?
I can probably touch on that a little bit. The difference between a zoning violation and a non-conformity is that a property that is a non-conforming structure or use at one point in time complied with zoning, and that due to some zoning change, whether it be a zoning district map or the zoning code itself, that, you know, basically the city feels that that change is better for the property, and in making that change, it creates the nonconformity. So any existing nonconformity that we have on any properties within the city of Harbor Springs came about through a change in the code, as opposed to a zoning violation, which is something that's done without ever complying with the code. So the idea here is that the use of this property through the RM, you know, in theory, we could look at what potential uses could be there, an apartment building or something else that fully complies with the RM district, as opposed to the use that's there and how it's actually being used, and what would we like to see there in the future. And the idea is that in making that change from RM to R2, we are creating a small existing nonconformity that previously did exist with the code. That's why it's a nonconformity as opposed to a zoning violation. So yes, we have the ability to create nonconformities. That's how they do happen.
Goes along with half the house or whatever.
Right.
I don't see a problem. You know, we're okay with it.
Did I see somewhere about adding the living quarters also? Somewhere down? No, that was
No.
that was something else. Too many words. Yeah, say the planning commission and Larry are comfortable with it. I don't see an issue with it. We've been pretty flexible on stuff like this before.
It's a huge lot,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
It just seems like the place they should be able to use more of it, to me.
Well, based on planning commission's review, I would make a recommendation to approve.
I'll second.
Good.
If there's a change in the code, I'll do a roll call vote. Matt Mugera,
Yes.
Al Dyka,
Yes.
John Leo,
Yes.
John Cops.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
And we have to do something about the ordinance now.
Yeah, we would have to, I guess, adopt this ordinance. I mean, probably could have been done with that vote.
Which is the implementation of what we just heard.
Yes. So,
I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance to change the zoning code for that piece of property.
Second.
Yeah, we probably could have expedited that a little bit. Okay. John Cops.
Yes.
Al Dyka.
Yes.
Matt Mugera.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried to adopt.
Thank you very much.
thank you, Council.
Thanks, Jeff.
We will move on to item C, which is Marina Park Plan update. So, Council had asked the Harbor Commission, the city staff to go back to the Harbor Commission to have a special meeting to discuss the Marina Park Plan and any, I guess, recommendations they had about the plan or issues they had with the plan. And I went to the Harbor Commission convened on April 22nd, and we discussed the plan. Dan Mulder from the Marina Park Committee gave a presentation because then he was having login audio issues. And the Harbor Commission was generally favorable to the plan. They had, I think, what I think were, and you probably read the minutes, 3 main concerns. The first one revolved around the shade sails. they were just worried, a couple members were worried about the noise of the shade sales, saying that last summer, especially because they weren't secured properly, they were pretty noisy, but they felt that even if they were secured better this year, they still might be noisy. The second issue was the Harbor Eats area. They had some concerns about taking away those six parking spaces to have food carts or tents or food trucks. They just felt even if it was on a park time situation, you know, if it was like a Saturday or Friday thing, you still have to close out the parking spaces for the majority of the day. That parking in July and August is already a significant issue. So there were some suggestions about alternate locations, perhaps putting on the grass right in front of it. So that was discussed. And the third one was about funding for the extra maintenance that it will take. They just had some disagreements with using waterfront funds to do that, to maintain, like, take down umbrellas, clean up the game there. In my opinion, regarding the sales, I think that they're right. Even if they are better secured, they'll still be noisy. However, I don't know how noisy they will be. I mean, definitely, if they're better secured, they'll be less noisy, but they'll still make some noise. But I suggest let's give it one last attempt to see if securing them better really does reduce the noise. And if it doesn't, then we can eventually scrap the idea. But I don't think it's a major issue to go with it. We didn't receive any complaints from the public other than last summer, other than visual complaints about how they were bringing in. So I never received one noise complaint from anyone. But as the voters, the Harbor Commission, other people know of it and heard of it. So the second issue on the parking lots, I think it's reasonable to move to the grass area, but I'd also suggest reaching out to businesses to see if any restaurants actually want to partake in it, and see if they're fine with using the grass area, and then there's really no point in taking out parking spots if they're fine with using the grass area. I think there's plenty of space there by that tree and the plant, by the Harbor Eats area. So I could do more research on that, or we could just move it to the grass and say that's where it should be, if we still want to go forward with it. And the third idea was the funding, and fortunately, staff's opinion, the funding has to come from a variety of sources. General fund, electric fund to paint the light posts, and this is a waterfront park. It benefits the boaters and waterfront users like kayakers and others. So some money coming from the waterfront funds to maintain the parks as they do currently. I don't see that as a major expenditure. I think we all need to chip in a little bit if we want to go forward with this. It can't just be all from the general funds. But it wouldn't be a lot from the waterfront funds. We're talking about a part-time employee or $5,000. So that's my opinion. So I would recommend approval, kind of going forward as presented. We did take out, if you see the revised drawing, we did take out, thank you to Dan and Mulder for doing this, take out still some of those plantings of flowers along the, and the Harbor Commission was completely on board with removing the tree, so we removed that tree because no one had any issue with removing that tree, that pine tree. So yeah, those flowers are gone, and we would just, we would run by a few more landscaping questions to the Marina Park Committee, just whether some hedges or some grasses in some areas, but I don't think it's anything like major for council. In general, this is the plan that would essentially be working on and fit it out to. But we would move the parking spots depending on if the council wants them in the parking spaces, fine. If they want them in the grass, we'll move them there, and that's it. Then we can come back and look at potentially creating some sort of temporary administrative ordinance that allows for food carts to be there.
Yeah, and I think, the Harbor Eats was a great idea, but I don't think you're going to find anyone to do it, personally. We talked to a couple people. There's no interest in it. So we scrap that. And if someone does come along and want to do something, we can let them do it on the grass.
What about a food truck or something like that? Would you go that big?
I said we already have a stop for the food trucks. It's not convenient, or particularly convenient. It's kind of a
Ford Park area.
Yeah, Ford
Shea
Park.
Yeah.
Or Shea Park. But it's not that far away. I mean, they'll walk, from the paper station to the park, or New York to the park to get their food. So
I just want to remind everybody that this is the summer to trial concepts. So just if you try it this summer, then we see, yes, it works out great, or no, it's not going to work out. And then that informs us for when we start working on the long-term plan.
Right. I don't think there's enough room there for food trucks.
Pardon?
I don't think there's enough room there for food trucks.
Yes, so that could have to be somewhere else, or they take up one of those Harbor Eats spots, or maybe we use some parking spots there down the Bay Street parking that back up to the area where the grasses are. Some logistics things, I think.
I think it would be nice to have some kind of eats there in some way for people that don't want to go into the restaurant, they just want something to drink or a sandwich.
Right.
I don't have a magic answer. I think of Wally's wagon, the hot. Just something simple, nothing that's real extravagant, but something, a couple simple things like that. We used to have
the pizza.
What's that?
The wood-fired pizza.
Yeah, just something.
Used to be down in front of the bank. Right. And that parking spot out in front of Harbor Master parking area right there. He was out. He had his trailer on Bay Street, but people came in from the sidewalk or the parking lot.
Yeah, something like that.
So that might be an idea.
You guys remember the coffee cart by the pier that would go in? I'm way back now. But even something like that would be really nice to be able to grab a cup of coffee like that.
DDA Director Margaret Moose just chatted, said she has spoken to one downtown restaurant that has expressed interest in participating with Harbor Eats, and a food truck has contacted her. They would like to sell downtown as well.
I might be in the restaurant.
I think we should try something and see
I
if
think
it
food
works.
down there in the park, as we try to drive people into the park, makes a lot of sense. And you're right, this is the year to try it.
Yeah.
If I could just add, I think it was in 2017 or 18 that we had the food trucks on the Bay Street location, and we had a lot of complaints about that location. That's why we moved it to Ford Park from there. If it's worth doing to try again.
Because of the lines and the sidewalk?
Well, I think there were two complaints. One was the view of having food trucks near that parking lot and around, but the other issue was specific to, I believe we were getting concerns with the lines for people waiting for food were taking up the sidewalk, and it was creating a situation where pedestrians then had to go out into parking spaces or the road to get around the food trucks and the lines that were there. That was one of the concerns.
Another issue that I recall is the wood-fired cooking. Those people have to come in early to start the fires, and then there is an odor of smell throughout when they're open. Right. People were complaining to us about that. And the businesses and the residents.
I think another complaint was the noise of the generator that was running for something.
Yeah, one thing, I'm not opposed to the food, but I think the 6 parking spots and the not lack of interest, but lack of anything concrete, it'd probably be better to move it into the grass and see if anyone really comes in and wants to do it.
The Bay Street, when they had the 2 or 3 down at Bay Street, it was free the ferry. So now a lot of traffic comes out the ferry as well. If somebody wanted to be at the Bay Street, it would be more accommodating because they'd be getting off the ferry. And that wasn't there back when the food trucks were down there.
That's true.
Now, at this point, have we we have publicized, but if we publicize the fact that there are locations to sell food at the park this summer, it would be interesting to see what kind of interest we get.
We won't know unless we publicize.
Exactly.
Another spot we could consider is the Harbor Master road parking there where the charging station is. That directly abuts the park, and then maybe wouldn't be so visually intrusive for people driving by on Main Street, if that makes sense.
It's a type
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
Well, I think giving up any parking, obviously a sensitive topic, but taking up parking spaces during peak season is going to be tough. I'd rather see
I just don't see pulling a food truck up on the grass.
A little cart. I mean, none of these food trucks are small anymore. I mean, they're all running 20, 24-foot trailers and different things like that. So, I mean, you're really taking a real estate
Right, yeah, with the truck, these were just little 10 by 10 pop-up.
Yeah.
Right, well, like that guy did the hot dogs here a
Yeah.
couple years
Hot
ago.
dogs, coffee cart, something.
Yeah.
business.
It's the right type of food.
But I don't think we want to bring food trucks into this area. I mean, keep them down by the Ford Park, but if somebody wants to bring a little stand in, I think it'd be great.
Great. I mean,
Now, I'm not against food there, but we don't have the space here to put food trucks, the trailers.
We did get a comment from Karen Stroh, who said that the Tasky Back Lot is really fun and pulls people from Harbor Springs. I think it's worth a try.
We don't have the space here to do the back lot. I mean, that's the problem. We have a couple businesses downtown that want to take their back area and turn it into something, we go with it, but.
So I guess really the only decision we need from council is whether to use the parking spots or use the grass space. If you guys are going to approve the Harbor East area with stands and tents.
I'd be more in favor of grass myself.
That's it,
As
grass.
long as we give it a try somehow and see.
Spare Valley.
Figure it out,
The permanent parking meeting is going on Wednesday, so I guess then that would make sure, unless there's any other comments from anyone, this would be essentially the approved plan, moving that forward, and we'll just go reconvene with the Marina Park Committee, and then our timeline is to get
Yeah, great.
landscapers.
Great plan.
I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah, well
Put
done.
this together.
I think it's going to be great.
Hi, I'm Bill McCullough. I live at 802 Ottawa at Harbor Springs. I have a couple prepared comments. I've been on the Harbor Commission for 30 years, maybe a little over. Chairman Bartlett could not be here tonight. He asked me to share a few thoughts. First off, I'd like to thank those who contributed and continue to contribute to the Marina Park Committee. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Dana, for allowing us an advance peek and for allowing us to share in the process. We're all on the same team here. For all its faults, we have a pretty nice facility that attracts and supports thousands of folks, local, seasonal, transient, who enjoy and contribute to the community. Over the decades, revenue realized by the city from the boating community has enabled us to fund the present building, the city-owned East Dock, the 2-hour dock, the launch ramp at Ford Park, kayak dock, racks, in addition to substantial contributions towards the beach and the maintenance of the grounds. The main issue I wish to address here tonight is funding. Marina Park is not used to a substantial degree by the boaters who pay into the waterfront fund. Boaters go out on their boats. They get in the dinghy and go. They unload the trailer and go. Boaters do shop and eat in restaurants. They don't spend a lot of time on the parks and grounds that the fund last year spent $115,000 maintaining. Our view is that the boaters funding half the cost of this space is disproportionate. The other less obvious issue with the disproportionate share of funding is the opportunity cost. Those funds are then not available to maintain and enhance the facilities that the boaters do use. In addition to the maintenance of the hard assets that we have, there are significant projects on our agenda that are costly. Upgrade and replace buildings. Ford Park needs work. If the surplus that the enterprise generates is continually drained away, these serious improvements to our waterfront cannot happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. I'm Laura Corris, 261 Travers Street, and also on the Harbor Commission. And actually, I was talking with Mike Johnson, who's quarantined because he's having surgery again, and he asked to just be cautious with the corner where the plantings are, but then I think you've already fixed it, because his job is to make sure the harbor's safe. And the line of vision was blocked with the tall stuff, but I think that what you just showed me took care of that, and I just wanted to make his statement for him. Thank you.
So I guess we just need approval of this plan.
I'll make a motion to approve with the exception that the food, we try to keep food on the ground.
I'm sorry, I did have one more question. From what I heard on last week's council meeting was the cost would be split in half, and tonight I hear we'd be responsible for one employee. What is this? When you say the recommendation, what is the recommendation?
The recommendation is as presented the plan, which included in my memo, which included just discussion that would be cost for one employee.
Okay, that's good.
I don't recall
I
if
think
anyone
last
said-
night, last meeting,
Yes.
I may have said that in response to a question Al had asked, and at the point we still don't really have hard dollar figures of what this is going to cost.
Okay.
So just off the cuff, I said, some of this expense would be absorbed by whatever funds without ever really spending time looking into it. How's it going to work? So I think that this makes most sense because you're right, this is a park open to everybody. So the general fund should be responsible for the bulk of it. However, I think with the one person like Victor's recommending being paid for through the waterfront fund, I also do realize, just in talking to Mike, how busy they really are down there. So to put any burden on them, I think this person could also help with the docks as well. It's not going to be a full-time project on this, so hopefully he can get some benefit for the voters out of that person as well.
Thank you.
Not yet.
Yes.
There was a motion, but before, so has the distribution of the cost been determined?
Not exactly, other than we have an estimate. We don't have a final breakdown of the numbers, but we are estimating probably the full thing that costs between $30,000 and $40,000. But that's depending if we go on the shade sale or not. It's going to bring up the cost. I think we're looking at designs for about $20,000 for landscaping, give or take some. Park benches, the rest of the benches and tables and shade sales are really the cost, the bulk of the other half of the cost. So the maintenance was what we proposed from the waterfront fund.
But I do think, and I understand the concern, but the water, that is city money that council controls. I mean, it is waterfront voting money, but it is city money. And I think we shouldn't have to give an absolute guarantee at this point that all the money that can come out of there is just to pay for that employee. I think we need to look at the big picture and see where those funds need to come from.
So what I suggest, if that's the approach you want to take, we could approve this project, and then when it comes to when we amend the budget in November, December,
We can figure it out.
well, I don't know, Nick, how would you?
Well, I guess it depends. This is a decision obviously for you guys with the input from the Harbor Commission and questions for me if you've got them, but I guess my starting point would be, okay, let's say yes, give this a nod, and then see, we've learned this in the last month, we might not even get any bids. And if we do, they could be twice what we're looking at, just because of the way the economy's going. So if they come back and said bids are probably right in the range where we were expecting them to be, then we need to decide as a council, how do we allocate those funds? So do we do like Victor recommends, or do we do something different? That's, I guess, up to us as a council.
So I guess we're just going ahead and approving to go out for bid, basically.
So there's two aspects. We're going for a bid for the landscaping.
Right.
We can purchase as many tables and benches as we want, essentially. Right. So if you want to purchase, 7, 8 new tables, we don't know exact number.
5 new. We reduced it just a little bit because there were concerns we were jumping in with too many. So I think it's 5 new picnic tables and 6 benches and 5 umbrellas that we'll trial this summer.
So, really the question, we are getting bids for the landscaping, but we don't need bids for the
Right.
We're going to get the same table, same bench that we have to match the style there. So really, the cost is really maintenance. Really, the maintenance cost would be closing the umbrellas, making sure the tables are clean, making sure that the games are put away, essentially.
And when you look at a portion of this expenditure, okay, there's tables, there's benches, there's umbrellas, if they're not needed, but if we find out this is not being used like we could hope it would, they can be repurposed elsewhere. So
right.
Another point in my thing of, this is more of a general fund type expenditure for these things. If we need them over here, we can move them.
Right. So we are approving this plan, but so if we approve this plan, we go forward with getting the tables and the benches, but we come back to you so the council can approve whatever bid landscape that we get. Because it's going to be over $10,000, and the council has to approve that bid.
Well, at least gets the ball rolling.
But it gets the ball rolling for the tables and the benches and those ones, and the game area.
June will be here before we know it.
Just to be clear, so the project would be paid out of the general fund, and the maintenance, the person would be paid out of the waterfront fund?
That's what we're proposing.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
That's what we're approving.
And some of the maintenance out of the electric fund.
That's for painting the electric light posts.
Regular maintenance.
Yeah, the electric fund owns those poles and they charge the city back, so therefore they should be responsible for their asset.
Okay. Well, I would second John's motion.
I've actually got mostly by Cops and seconded by Nancy, and then we got
Go for it.
Move it forward.
roll call. Al Dyka.
Yes.
John Cops.
Yep.
John Leo.
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
Matt McGuire.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Item D, Harbor Springs Area Sewer Authority Capacity Authorization. That was a mouthful. So basically, if you remember, late 2019, for those who were on council, we came to council. Bear Creek was reaching their limit on sewage capacity that they had rented, and so that they have authority to use. So they rented from Harbor Springs, and they were going to give us the rent payment for that. Well, they were giving us a rent payment right there for that capacity that we rented out to them. However, after examining 2020 usage, we exceeded our sewer capacity, so we need to take back what we rented to Bear Creek Township, essentially, the 100,000 gallons per day, and no longer receive that rental payment, because we feel that trend is probably going to stay high and go higher, so we need all the capacity we get. So basically, because council authorized us to rent to Bear Creek, or we council permission, authorization to take back that rental, essentially. And the Harbor Springs Authority, they're all on board with that. I mean, this is pretty much a done deal on their, but this is more of a formality.
Yeah, we've discussed this at the sewer authority, and we're just all switching up, sharing the capacity of the place. I make a motion that we approve the capacity authorization. Second.
Just need a
John Cops.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Matt McGuire.
Yes.
Al Dyka.
Yes.
And Nancy Rondell. Motion carried.
Okay, item E is the heavily amendment ballot language finalization. So Attorney Jim Raymer, Cliff Whitaker, and I have been working on this language for the ballot. November 2nd. Yeah, November 2nd, 2021 ballot. About, we've been talking about this for about 3-4 months now at least. So we've finally come to a point where council can approve an ordinance, approve a resolution for us to take this to the ballot for the voters to decide on. The main points of this ballot are that the city cannot raise the millage by more than $500,000 in any given year. The second point is that the city can only raise the millage if first it's determined necessary or advisable by council after we meet all the obligations of the Michigan General Property Tax Act. And finally, what this would do would be restoring our charter permitted millage rate of 15, which does not mean that the city will or can charge 15 mills. However, what it does is, as we've described several times, as the millage, the way the heavy rollback amendment works is that as property values go up, our tax rate goes down, and property values have been going up, and we've been seeing less revenue from that tax rate. And we cannot raise the taxes even if we wanted to or needed to. We can't raise that mill, I should say, back to a sustainable level that we had like 4 years ago, which was just around 6 or 6.2. And we will obviously, we've seen this a lot of times, and we have a lot of education and outreach to do on this issue. But the language is there for everyone to see. And if you have any questions, Nick, Jim, and I are here to answer those questions. But this is exactly what the voters will be seeing, what you see in front of you.
You've been explaining this for several months. I'm still don't get the it's above my pay grade, so. Let's pay the taxes and everything will be. Yeah, I just taxes.
Now, it is a very, very complicated thing to try to grasp. I will give you that.
But it makes sense. I mean, obviously when Nick explains our highs and our lows of Well, we could end up in the next few years.
And the whole thing with my bringing this to you guys was not about raising taxes. That is not where this was spearheaded from. As you can see, and we won't get into a terrible lengthy discussion here because that time will come, but as these things get rolled back from every time, as Victor explained, when the property taxes go up, our millage rate goes down. Well, the property tax values can still continue to fluctuate up and down, but our millage can't. It's locked. So to be able to unlock that, we have to take it back to the voters. It doesn't mean every year when we look at our budget, we can just keep, we have to add half a mil. We can stay where we're at. We can sustain it. If property taxes stay where they're at, okay, perfect. If property taxes drop 25%, which sooner or later we all know they will, then we've got an issue where we cannot move even any wiggle room to go up to recoup that loss. So there will be a lot of discussion, education. We'll have public forums. We'll have, I'm guessing, newspaper articles and stuff in the upcoming months. But as Victor said, this is what will be in front of the voters.
Any proposed increase would come before council, would be justified as part of the budget cycle.
That would be part of the budget cycle, yes. If we said, okay, here's budget season, here's what, the general fund expenditures are, here's our list of projects that everybody wants to do, here's where we're at. We don't, we can't go there. And then if the council decides at that point, let's drop these projects, let's not raise taxes, and move on. So it's not something that just automatically happens.
And if we needed to fund a project, when the project was completed, the rate could actually go down.
It could, yes, based on the needs for the next year. I mean, the next year I could say, okay, I don't need to do this to operate the general fund.
Right.
Let's lower it down to here's what I do need.
Right.
So it doesn't mean your taxes are going to go up and stay up forever. But it's a hard concept, yes.
Well, I think we need to do this, and I'll make a motion that we adopt this resolution.
I'll second it.
John Cox?
Yes.
John Leo?
Yes.
Nancy Rondell? Yes. Matt Lagera?
Yes.
Al Breika?
Yes.
Motion carried. Guys, now we just need to get this explained.
Now the fun stuff.
Absolutely. All right.
Make sure you work on that.
Yes. Thank you to Jim and Nick, especially.
Thank you, Count.
Thanks, Jim. Item F, request to fly city flag at City Hall. This is a nuance in our code, which prohibits any flag from flying other than the American flag and the Michigan state flag. Obviously, the Planning Commission has been kind of looking at this with university flags being on poles and stuff. We do have a city flag that we purchased with our logo that we'd like to fly out at City Hall, so we're coming to council for an ask to do that. I think it would be very good to have a little community pride.
Just laugh at the fact that you got to ask. Right? Yes. I'll make a motion to say yes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed?
Great, thank you. 3G. 3G sounds like 5G. It's coming. 3G is here. 3G is here, which is Police Chief Knight and the annual Police Department update for 2020.
Well, provided, hopefully you saw our annual report, and I'm here to answer any questions. I just want to give a couple highlights on there, a few highlights. I'll make it brief. First of all, when I started here, I said we would provide 24/7, 365 coverage, and we maintain that for the last year. I think it's really important. I spoke about it before because not only do we have somebody on duty all the time, but I feel like we also deter crimes from happening. And there's no stat on how many crimes you deter because they don't keep that stat. If somebody was driving town at 3 in the morning to do a breaking and entering and see a patrol car, that's not a stat we would know. So I just think it's very important. We completed that without a strain on overtime as we rotate the schedule, and I work the remainders of the shifts. In 2020, we budgeted 242 hours of overtime. I take the highest paid officer, divide that by how much we budget, and we use 217 hours, so we were well below that, or 35 hours below that. Our part-time budget, we budgeted 696 hours, and we only used 442 hours. That's not in my report, I'm just sharing it with you. And our Marine Patrol budget, we budgeted 928 hours, and we used 639 hours. So all those, I felt like we were below, I know we were below budget. The most important thing as far as staffing for 2020, or 2020, was the fact that we had nobody off for COVID throughout the whole year. And I credit the guys a lot because they were tired of seeing my emails, but when we were in the office, we maintained our social distance. We had 4 direct exposures. Actually, John was with me on one of them, but we had 4 direct exposures where we were exposed to somebody with COVID, but because of what we do and the fact that we used our mask and we used our precautions, that nobody in our department got COVID. And I think that is a credit to the guys across the street and the fact that I stressed to them that we needed to have people here. And if we lost one, downstate, DeWitt Township was a department where I used to work in that area, and they had to close their department for a couple of weeks because they lost over half their staff to COVID. So I credit all the guys for working hard on that. Our staffing, which is in here, Steve Timmons been here 36 years, and then we added Mitchell last year, so we go from Steve at 36 to a new guy who's 23 years old who's been here a year on June 10th. We also added Emily in December, and I introduced her to you, and she's been a great addition. She's worked very hard at our office and helping me out with a lot of tasks. One of the things that I've stressed every year is to continue to reduce the amount of written reports. And that might seem good or bad, but when I first came here, we did a lot of written reports, which required a lot of time in the office, not on the road. Every year we sort of pecked away at that. In 2017, we wrote 953 written reports. Last year we wrote 412 written reports. So we've reduced it over half. But the benefit to the taxpayers in that is it allowed us from 2017 to drive 43,000 miles throughout the city. Last year we drove 66,000 miles. So that's 24 more thousand miles that we patrolled the city streets throughout a year. So that puts another body or somebody being seen out there, and I'm proud of the guys for that. In my report, the foot patrol and public relations decreased with COVID. I mean, we didn't walk downtown as much, we didn't get to schools as much, but our property checks went up from 130 to 1,381. So where we were not making contact with citizens, we were shaking doors and stuff like that, so it sort of balanced out. Traffic crashes decreased from 88 in 2018 to 66 in 2020, so every year we've steadily gone down in that. And our traffic citations, even with COVID, remained about the same. I think in 2019 we wrote 95, and last year we wrote 90, which is a balancing number. We're not out to, like Miles Sheriff said, we're not out to pick war with our people, but we also have to enforce the traffic laws just to make sure that people are reducing those crashes. Major crimes remain consistent. Once again, for the third year in a row, we didn't have a B&E, knock on wood on that one. We saw an increase in fraud complaints. We're still getting a lot of fraud complaints. A lot of people, because of the internet, because of the phone, and people are falling into these. And actually, I don't know if you saw, there was an article in the Traverse City Gold Record about our recent fraud here we had down in Hillside. But our fraud continued to rise. There's not a whole lot that we can do about that, but try to, besides education. Parking enforcement increased from 528 to 786 last year. Our citations was up quite a bit. And that's mostly due to, we were able to chalk last year downtown instead of take pictures. It helped us a little bit, and the activity at Ford Park, there was a lot more activity at Ford Park last year. And then with our foot patrol, public relations, interaction with schools, including having an officer every morning and every afternoon, we're in the school zones. You see us driving down Lake Street, we're by the schools. It's a priority of mine, it's a priority of the guys that we're always in that school zones, trying to make sure our kids get to and from school safe, and our teachers and our parents. And then you'll see in my cover letter, I stress the 3 C's: commitment, compassion, and community service. Tell the guys we got to be committed to the people that we serve. We got to have compassion for the people that we serve as well. Somebody might call the police, and it might be the only time in their life that they call the police. They want to make sure that interaction's a positive one. Learn that downstate, somebody might call them for a smashed mailbox. That might be the only time that person calls the police, but I want to make sure that if they call the Harbor Springs Police, that we have the empathy, we have the compassion, and that we're committed to doing what we can do. And then community service. We don't have a community service or community policing officer. We're all that. The guys rotate shifts, so they're on days or on afternoons or on middays. but I encourage them to walk downtown, I encourage them to get up to schools, and they all do that. And I feel we have a really good staff. I hope we can keep them. You know, I got young guys, I got old guys, and myself as an old guy, but I hope that we can keep our staff, because I'm really pleased with the staff we have right now. And I put in my cover letter, if you ever feel that we're not doing one of those 3 C's, I want to know about it. I want to, address it, take it on, or if anybody has some suggestions as far as how we can do things better as a police department. I was watching today when I was at the gym, they were talking about the large cities and how their crime's going up and how the defunding of police. And our guys, and I told you this probably a month and a half ago, we appreciate you guys, the support you give us. And there's not a guy across the street or that's on patrol that doesn't realize that for a city, the population we have, to have a full-time police department, we're blessed. We, us as police officers are blessed, and we're blessed to the appreciation that we have. And I want to make sure that we're giving back to the public what you guys expect of us. So that's how it's going. So any questions on our report? No? All right.
Thank you for being here.
I sincerely say that the guys talk about it. I mean, I have a lot of people coming to town, and we get thanked all the time we're downtown. Thanks for being here, thanks for that. And you don't get that in every city. And they're very thankful to have a job here in Harbor Springs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item agenda H, consent agenda for future meetings. So this is a type of agenda that other cities and municipalities in Michigan and across the country do. Not everywhere, but it kind of helps expedite meetings, streamline meetings. Essentially, you put non-controversial routine items on the agenda in the consent agenda item section, where you can vote on all of those with roll call at once. For example, the minutes, the bills. I would mention from this meeting, the Harbor Springs Sewer Authority capacity authorization, something simple that there shouldn't be a debate but probably discussion on. And how I envision this working for us would we have a consent agenda. The mayor would ask for any public comment on any of those agenda items. If there is none, ask the council members if they're fine with all those being the consent, or if they want to take one of those items out to put to discussion item. And if they do want to take an item out and put a discussion item, there's a discussion section of the agenda, then as long as one council member wants a discussion section, then we put it there. But it will help us just avoid all these, roll calls, all these votes, and basically not unnecessary discussion for routine things. And I would encourage council members, if they have questions about any specific agenda item that might be on the consent agenda, to ask me for clarification. And then if they still decide they want to discuss it, then we can discuss that at a meeting. And I've added a few different municipalities. Their agendas, Charlevoix does this, Troy, others downstate. And I think it just helps expedite and focus our attention and discussion on those items that really need that discussion.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's great. I sit on a board where we do that, and it saves hours of board meetings. You can always pull something out if you need to discuss it, but otherwise, I like it. I think it's a great
But
idea.
even for the minutes, if there was a slight change, still approve with the changes.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
just
great.
speed it up.
The routine stuff.
Get a motion?
Yeah, well, just eliminate a motion. Let's just make an official change.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll say.
All in favor of a consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And if council ever feels something's not working, then we just have discussion on it. I'm going to do my best in these first few minutes with the mayor to determine what should go on the consent agenda and what should go on the discussion. It's a guessing game. Who knows what we're going to discuss?
Well, if we do our job before we get here, read everything and ask questions beforehand.
Item I is the reorganization of staff positions. So with 2 open positions, the assistant to the city manager position as well as the parks director position, I was looking at ways to save money in the budget as well as to give our constituents more for the tax money they spend. And the idea was to eliminate the assistant to the manager position, distribute some of those tasks amongst City Hall staff, and then bump up the parks director from a part-time to a full-time position. Right now, he's at 25 to 28 hours. We'd be essentially giving him 11 or 12 more hours. We'd be more likely to get a good candidate for that. We'd save the city approximately $35,000 to $45,000 annually, depending on what that salary is. And if some years we might need, I would think we may need a summer intern or a temporary worker to assist on some projects. But other than that, I don't think we have a need for a full-time assistant to the city manager position. So I'm suggesting eliminating that position and bumping up the hours for the parks director to a full-time position for the cost savings of $35,000 to $45,000. I think the increased duties would include more grant writing, more fundraising, more recreation programming, which we didn't get to. With Denny had always worked more hours than he was allotted without charging the city. So it was, he said it's a lot of work, especially the maintenance aspect, especially for improving things. So that's my recommendation. And because council approved back in early 2020 approval of a part-time, releasing budget for a part-time parks director position, and our hiring policy just requires because it's going to be an increased position annually for an increased budget, that council approved that.
I don't have a problem with it. I think we need a parks director. Denny kind of
Show that rolling for us.
So, he had a lot of good ideas to make, at least nothing else, maintain some things we had. So if you don't think you need an assistant, it can be done in-house. So
It's been about a month right now, and we've distributed the minutes and other tasks to other employees, and it's just using more efficient use of our time at this point. But I think beneficial we might need for some projects, whether it's for the clerk, for the assessment, for the city manager. If there's any special projects in the future that we need help on, then we could get an intern or someone, we pay them for work 20 hours for a couple months. But it would be still a huge cost savings than having a full-time permanent assistant position.
Could you pull that parks director out of his title position to do that assistance for other people, like for you, if you need it for a week or two? Is it going to be a salaried employee? Or
It would be a salary.
so we have more flexibility with how we use them.
Yes,
than
we
we do
do.
with a union employee.
Correct. It would not be a union position. I do imagine, it would be taking over a lot of the administrative tasks that both I and the former assistant city manager did, such as grant writing. Even though that was in the initial outlook for the Parks and Rec part-time position, just no way to get to it. Some of these grants take a lot of hours, a lot of time. Fundraising takes a lot of hours, a lot of time. So essentially some of those burdens, all these things like event applications, like all these things that were kind of split amongst many people would be focused in the Parks Director position, in addition to rec programming. So yes, I could technically use them for whatever, for some of those special, as long as they have a skill set to do what.
Right. Well, and posting a full-time position is going to open up the field to people with the qualifications you want.
Yeah.
For the part-time, I don't think you'll get the kind of person you want, or their risk of leaving.
Yes.
I'm in favor of the savings of $45,000 in the general fund, so.
Well, and it's either goes to this savings account, back to the reserve funds, or to any other priorities council wants to focus on. So instead of focusing on spending that money on a staff member, maybe it's, we need to put this money for something else. So it gives us more flexibility, but of course that's just one benefit.
I think that's a good question, Al, that being that this position will be non-union gives Victor a lot more flexibility. A lot of those positions within the union are set in stone. And that, I think, was the whole reasoning for the previous hiree, is to be able to have some control over what you could give this person to do. So,
Catchphrase in every job application, other duties of assignment.
I think it's a good plan to reorganize. Need a motion?
Yep, I would authorizing us to expand and use our funds, create a full-time.
I would so move.
I'll second.
No, trying all John Cox.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
Al Reka.
Yes.
Matt Revere.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great, thank you, and I'll get working on that advertisement. Hopefully we have someone to lead the Marina Park Committee, so.
We just figured out $35,000 too.
That didn't
Just
take
paid
long.
for it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Comes and goes.
All right, last item on the agenda is city manager evaluation. I believe you all have, well, I know you all have the information in front of you. We're working with Nick and the personnel committee to evaluate me as well as to reconsider my contract, so that's on the table here. I really appreciate extending the contract and being here. I'm happy to be here.
We've discussed you at great length. Are happy with your job that you've done so far. That's one of the sticking points we have is to extend your contract longer than you want it. Negotiate that. Yeah, so that's one of the
I
negotiating.
think we included that in there.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years instead of 3 years.
Well, we felt you've done a really good job under some pretty adverse conditions. I mean, there's no way you knew what you were walking into. And you've really spun a lot of plates really, really well, dealt with some very difficult and unpleasant decisions. We felt we wanted to show you the commitment that we like the job you've done, we want you to stick around, so putting you on an extended period of time on the table.
I appreciate that. It means a lot. So, I guess, Nick, what we need is
I guess
approval of the contract.
everybody's been in contact. Obviously, the personnel committee's been involved, and that recommendation was given by them to the council in the form of this proposed agreement. And we would need a motion to approve the contract with the city manager.
I would move that we approve the contract with the city manager.
I will second that.
Nancy Rondell.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Al Reka.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yep.
Matt Revere.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for doing a good job.
Well,
Thank you.
The last question I have for you then is, we didn't get to this part, is goal setting. But I know I've read your comments individually, but I mean, it's one thing to read individual comments, another thing to get unified direction from the council. So maybe something we don't have to do today, because I don't know if you guys are prepared to have that discussion as a whole, but I think it's important for me to have, going forward, to know what the priorities are of council for me to focus on. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, from parks to affordable housing to budget to waterfront funds, how we use the different funds. There's a lot of different, obviously, issues to focus on. We only have so much time and resources. Enforcement and like zoning enforcement, that's another thing. There's a lot of different.
Is it possible to put all of our stuff on a sheet that we can look at and kind of prioritize?
Absolutely. I can put, what I did is I summarized the sheets numerically, how was a 1 through 5 score. I summarized those for the personnel committee's use. And then I just let the personnel committee review any individual comments if they chose to. They didn't really need to. That was more of Victor's.
Right.
But yes, I mean, I can summarize some of the comments of what was mentioned about different goals. I got to be honest with you, there wasn't a ton. But sure, I can put something together. Absolutely.
That would get the discussion started.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right.
And it probably would be helpful for the entire council to have that, but we talked about it, and as far as goals go, that's been evolving over time with everything we put on the table. Setting relative priorities, we can have that discussion, but that changes too. I mean, it's real dynamic as it moves from day to day. Lawsuit here, COVID there. I mean, so we can have the discussion, but
Yeah, it depends on the situation that we're in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Short, it's kind of the important versus the urgent.
But
And that's what I think you've done a good job managing from day to day, week to week. But it would be helpful for the entire council, I think, to have that discussion to see what's on the table.
Well, I think that's where I'm getting at. It was a general, because I remember when I first started here, even during the interviews, you guys kind of all mentioned, or you two were on the meeting, but what like your general thoughts were, goals were, like what issues you felt with the city, and so I mean it's good to kind of reassess and like realign back with that new council members, things have changed. So it doesn't mean we're to strictly follow those goals, but idea of what's important to you, affordable housing, renewable energy. We worked on renewable energy, you know, we have some projects there. So is there time now to shift gears to somewhere else? So it's just, you know, put a little more emphasis on something over another.
But again, we felt the entire council should participate in it, not just the.
Yeah, personnel.
We need to set goals for the council so that we can relay them to you.
You want me to tell you what you should tell me to do?
We're going to try.
I would still tell you.
As long as you keep moving the shit forward, I think we're in good shape.
All right, well, that's fine. So then we'll, if you can.
Yeah, summarize those and get them sent out. I'll just put numbers together on the scoring, and then I'll just list out individual comments for each little section and send them out to you.
Great.
How much your other duty?
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Managers report, not a whole lot, well, a whole lot's going on, but not a whole lot in the report. We technically are going live this week with our utility bill payments.
No. Really? Already?
Technically. It's only been 2 years.
How's that for support figures?
It's well deserved.
Yeah, what a process.
Yeah, so that's exciting. The West 3rd and Bay Street projects are still ongoing. It may look like no activity is going on. That's because we're still waiting for the plants to open up to put the asphalt down. So we've got a couple inquiries from residents on 3rd Street, especially about why no progress has been made. So that's why we're still waiting for the asphalt to come. Just some general, yeah.
So that and a little wet.
And a little wet, yeah, now it's a little wet. Harbor Commission had a meeting. Basically, we had some FirstNet training, which is FirstNet is it's actually a government-sponsored program that gives priority to government employees for cell phone towers. So you get boosted to the top.